So welcome to our channel. Here we're going to show you how we turned our house into our small family farm. We're going to take you along how we accomplish lots of small projects and how you can do them too. So today we got this idea from a local store that sells lots of antiques and cool stuff about these hanging map structures here. Instead of mounting them in the picture frame, we're going to basically put two pieces of wood on the bottom and on the top and sandwich it in there so that way it hangs pretty freely like that, and it kind of looks like old school, like they rolled up or something to that effect. So we're going to show you how that's done pretty easily. We're going to measure the wood, we're going to cut it, we're going to drill it, stain it, seal it, and then we're going to mount it. Alright, so to begin this project, we got these 1x2 by 8 foot long poplar boards. They're about $6 per, and we're going to use 4 total for this entire project. So we've already measured the maps. The next one we're going to do is 31 inches long. So we're going to add 3/4 of an inch to that and make 2 pieces of wood that are 31 1/4 inches long, 31 3/4 inches long, and that'll be the top and the bottom front faces. In addition to that, we're going to make 6-inch sections on the end that we're going to cut with our compound miter saw that'll make the 1x2 into about 1/2 x 2, and that'll be the backing. This would be a lot easier if you had a table saw. I just don't, and it's not worth it to buy it for this project alone. Start here, we get the end of the board, we're going to measure out 31 and then 3/4 of an inch. And then I'll show you why here in a second, but we're going to add 6 inches and make another mark. So that'll be 37 3/4. Also, we're going to transfer it to the top of the boards here. So I'll make our first cut at 37 3/4, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So this is where it would be really handy if you had a table saw, because as you can see here, this is the end of the section that we're going to use for that top and bottom on the first one. But what we're going to use is the compound miter saw to make a cut right down the center of this, and that'll be the backings on the top half as well. We mark it on the top just to make sure that that saw doesn't go past that line and ruin this piece of wood. I wouldn't normally recommend this. I'd recommend just buying a table saw if you can, but this is a small project and I'll just be careful with it. Make sure to use gloves for this because it'll want to try and pull that piece of wood, so if you use gloves it'll be easy to hold on to. Okay, so this is exactly what we want. We got that line here, which is the end of our 31 3/4 inch piece, and then you can see it's cut down the center. Now we're going to cut this off, and these will be the 2 backers. Alright, so we got the top and the bottom, the big piece that'll go, and then the 2 backers go behind it. As you can see here, it'll kind of sit something like this with this part out, and we'll drill a hole and we'll put a screw in here. So next we'll basically do the same thing. We'll make it 31 3/4, extend it out by 6 inches, and so we can make the bottom parts. Perfect. Awesome. Now we got our pieces. Now let's drill and then we'll stain. Okay, so to drill this, I've got a tiny drill bit, and this is going to be used as a pilot hole for the screws that we're going to put in next. We just did this because we didn't want it to splinter or break the wood when we did screw it in. So all that we're going to do to get this ready is we're going to place the backers where they're going to go in the future, and then we're going to get our drill bit loaded onto our drill. And something to note, I don't know if you can see that, I did put a piece of tape on there, and I measured the depth that I want to go to with the drill bit, and I put a piece of tape on there to remind me so I don't go too deep and drill through that piece of wood. And I'm going to go basically right about in the center. I'm going to do that for all the pieces. Now that all the pilot holes are done, we're going to start staining. Now for this, as you can see over here, I just cut a bag in half, a trash bag in half, and I'm going to use this dark walnut stain that I just had left over from another project. And then after that dries in a couple hours, we're going to use a matte polyurethane. It's a quick drying, so it'll be done in about 2 hours, and then we'll be able to hang it. Alright, so now that we got our pieces drilled, we're going to get our stain ready. We just got a nice dark walnut Minwax stain that we had left over from another project. So I'm gonna just make sure it's nice and swirled around. I'll open it and then start staining the pieces. As always, you don't need this step, but I definitely like to do it. It makes it easier for cleanup. I'll put some gloves on to keep the stains off my hands, especially if we're going to be manipulating these pieces while we're staining it because they're so small. This will help and clean up quite a bit. Other tips for this, make sure to have some paper towels here so that way when you wipe off the stain, it's pretty easy and handy. I'll also use the last piece that I'm going to use to stain up against that. And then it's a couple of these plastic bins that it's up against, that way I can lean up the pieces once I get them stained. This is where gloves come in handy. You can touch the sides, not worry about getting stain on your hands. Alright, so what I'll do after I just brush on the stain, as soon as it's on there, I'm just going to take my paper towel and wipe it off. At least wipe off the excess. And that gives it a pretty good look, and then I'll just lean it up against that. So that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and get all the rest of the pieces stained off here, and then we'll let them sit for a couple hours. After they sat for a couple hours and dried off, we'll get ready to poly them. Alright, now that the stain is nice and dry, we're going to go ahead and get the polyurethane on. What we're going to be using for this one is just a pretty standard polyurethane that's a matte finish, because we don't want it to look too shiny. Going to make sure to always stir this up pretty good before you use it, so that way it's not separated. So a good tip, and this is for painting, staining, or anything, you don't want to dip your brush all the way down into the liquid. You just want the very tip of it covered. That way it's easier to clean up and you can control where that liquid goes. This stuff you don't need a whole lot. For some reason, this polyurethane, it actually goes on like a white color, and I'm not sure why, but it definitely goes away. You'll see in the next segment here, and it looks really good, gives it a nice protection and a cool little like matte finish, which I like a lot. Alright, so now that those are stained and we got that matte sealer on it, they're looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and take our first picture off the wall out of the frame, and we'll get it all set up and screwed in. Alright, so what we're going to do is, we got the big piece that'll go on the bottom, which will eventually be the front. We're going to lay this in here so it overlaps, and it's going to just come up to where that bottom screw area is. And then, once it's on there, we'll get it nice and level and straight. Okay, we go ahead and place this. So, we have those three holes drilled out previously. We're going to grab 3 of our screws. Okay, you don't want to screw it in too hard because that'll split the wood if you do it too much and too fast. So take your time, nice and slow. You can kind of see it there, and then we'll do on the bottom. Okay, so I got my new string made. This one with longer loops, so that way they'll fit underneath here. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to take it in a little bit. So you're gonna see screw come on just a little bit, right? That'll just help me guide this twine on. Then I'll take it back out so the wood levels out, and then all the way in. Perfect, nice and secure. There you go, that looks awesome. The map itself is a little bit warped, but that's just due to the map being the way it is. Otherwise, I think it looks great. It came out perfectly. For all 4 of these, I bought 4 beams of 1x2s that are 8 feet long, and they were about $6 each, so 24 bucks plus like $3 for the screws, so looking at like 27 bucks for all 4 of these pictures to be mounted like this, and I just used some extra stain and polyurethane. So that's pretty easy, guys. Thank you for watching another one of our project videos. If you like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below, and make sure to catch our next video that comes out pretty soon.